Welcome to the video PowerPoint, Win Friends and Influence People. This presentation is about how to make your team more effective by understanding the people you work with, specifically through understanding the behavioral styles and communication styles of your team members and what that means in developing processes and procedures to help facilitate effective team communication. Very often on teams, we get off to a bad start. We end up in little misunderstandings, could be just a verbal tiff that makes it a little bit difficult to work with an individual, or it could get worse, resulting in all-out war and conflict that just makes the workplace a hostile environment where no one wants to be, makes teamwork almost unbearable, and ruins projects. So in order to avoid these types of conflicts and misunderstandings, you need to know who it is you're working with and what it is their preferences are in terms of communication and behavior styles. In other words, you should know your audience. One good way to do this is by looking at the behavior styles of the people on your team. Now, there are 4 basic communication behavior styles. And I know sometimes it seems difficult to think that we can put all of humanity into 4 boxes. But we're not measuring motivations and values here. We're looking specifically at behaviors. And so when we look at behaviors, we're just seeing the top of the iceberg. We're not evaluating people, we're simply observing what it is that they do. And these behaviors allow us to prototype that individual and know how to respond to them in the moment. Now, it doesn't mean because you end up in one quadrant, say you're a driver in one situation, and you find yourself with amiable behaviors in another situation. It doesn't mean you're schizophrenic, multiple personality disorders, or that you've mapped yourself incorrectly. What it means is that the values, beliefs, attitudes that shaped that behavior in one situation may be different or alternative in another situation. So observe people in the environment that they're in order to prototype their behavior styles. Now, what we begin looking at first with actions is assertiveness, and that's on the x-axis. So, less assertive people talk less, ask more, have indirect eye contact. More assertive people, well, they don't let you get a word in edgewise. They're really full of energy and very decisive. So if you're less assertive, you're on the left end of this visual. And if you're more assertive, you're mapping more towards the right side. Once you've measured the assertiveness level of the behavior, then you start to observe whether that individual is less emotive or more emotive. If they're less emotive and they're more towards the top of the scale, they're more rigid, they're harder to read, they're more task-oriented, probably a little bit less social. If you're more emotive, probably a looser body posture, easier to read, these are people-oriented people that are more social. Now, being emotive or less emotive doesn't mean that you're more or less emotional. What it means is that you express those emotions differently, that your focus is either on the task if you're less emotive, rather than on the individual, which is where the focus is if you're more emotive. So now, when you measure behavior, let's review. You first look at the assertiveness level and then the emotiveness level of the individual. And this allows you to then prototype individuals by putting them into the quadrants based on their behaviors. Now, each quadrant has its own behaviors, and if we move clockwise through these quadrants, we start with the driver, who is more assertive and less emotive. Then we move to the expressive, who is more assertive and more emotive, over to amiable, who is more emotive and less assertive, and up to the analytic, who is less emotive and less assertive. Now, no one quadrant is better or worse than any other. Each has strengths and its weaknesses. So, for example, I'm a driver, which means that I'm independent, results-oriented, candid, pragmatic, I'm future-thinking, and I make quick decisions. These are all great things in my opinion, but at the same time, if you're working on a team with me and I'm not communicating well, you may see me as a poor collaborator. I might be impersonal, abrasive, short-sighted, and just overall obnoxious to work with. Same goes for each quadrant. So understanding what the strengths are for that individual's behavior and what that means their weaknesses may be as well helps you assign roles on your team, helps you develop processes and procedures that accommodate people's preferences and play to their strengths. It helps you overall understand who you're working with in order to create a better working environment. As you create a good working environment for your team, you need to develop processes to promote success. Now, there's 4 key aspects of successful teams: good information sharing, shared goals and values, psychological safety, and leadership. So let's start with information sharing. Everyone in the team needs to be kept in the loop. Make sure that all team members have access to timely information, meeting minutes, and document all team decisions. Also, identify the team's preferred method of communication. You can do all of this by setting up processes that work for your team. Have an honest conversation. Think about the behavioral styles on your team. So, for example, as a driver, I work quickly and I often forget to hit reply all. So if I'm on a team that's sharing information with everybody and expecting everyone to be kept up to date only through reply all, chances are someone's going to miss an email at some point because I moved too quickly, decided and responded without hitting reply all, and then someone's out of the loop. One way to address this is by creating a sharing website using a wiki such as Wigio or a Blackboard file exchange where all information is posted. So instead of sending an attachment, you post the document to the file exchange. That way everyone has access to it. Another example is if you're working on a team with people who only text and don't ever check their email, you may want to use a site like Wigio that allows you to post to the wall and then receive that information as a text message rather than an email. These are processes that will promote information sharing because if everyone doesn't have the same information, you make bad decisions. Next, work on processes that set up goal alignment. Take steps like making sure that your team sets aside meeting time for honest conversations about goals and motivations. Be very clear and specific about what the objectives are for each project and task. For example, again, as a driver, when we say, well, let's go climb the mountain on Sunday, I may think you mean scale top peak and stand on that pinnacle and wave to the world, whereas my amiable teammate may think we're just going for a lovely little hike in the foothills. Clarify specifically what those goals and objectives are and what it means for each individual so that you're all on the same page moving forward. Goal alignment or misalignment creates a lot of problems, and if you don't address it up front, your final results may not match your expectations. You also want to think about psychological safety. If you're sharing information and have processes to make sure everyone is kept in the loop, you have clear conversations and document very specifically in your meeting minutes and other team documents what the goals and objectives are for each task and project, you're already on your way to creating psychological safety and trust on your team. This is very important, and it has to do with accommodating the preferences of all your team members by creating processes that facilitate consensus and address everybody's comfort level. We all make decisions very differently. Again, going back to myself as an example, as a driver, I make decisions very quickly. I don't mind coming into a meeting, reading a document, having a discussion, and making a decision right then and there. My analytical teammate, on the other hand, may not feel as comfortable making a decision in the moment. Therefore, my team should set up a process that posts the information ahead of time, allowing my analytical teammate to read the information, feel comfortable with all aspects of that information in order to make a decision then later at the meeting. As a driver, I may wait till the meeting to read that information. But either way, that process allows both of us to make decisions in our comfort zone. It creates psychological safety on our team and promotes consensus and facilitates discussion. Finally, share leadership. Even if you have a designated leader on your team, rotate the responsibilities in meeting facilitation to make sure that you share ideas through discussion, and everybody needs to create buy-in. Leadership is not about authority. Leadership is about leading by example. Be transparent and honest, and your team will be successful. This will help you create a culture of teamwork, avoid conflict, and produce more successful projects that make you a more successful professional.